Have you ever spent time thinking about whether or not you're crazy? And I mean that in the kindest way to the mentally ill. Crazy is just a word, just like mentally ill is. Means the same thing. Means, are you seeing perhaps reality, or is your impression of reality really skewed? And a person with a skewed impression of what's really happening around him or her, I would say, is either, on a drug or is having some sort of a mental disorder or disruption. Okay? So I think about my own thinking. And I apologize if my speech is a little bit slurred. I am not drinking. I have been on nitrous oxide this morning during having some dental work, and I had a numbing put in to my mouth, and so the side of my face is a little bit swollen, and I'm not in full use of my face, but I think the nitrous is worn off and that my brain is back functioning again. So the past couple of weeks, I've been obsessed a little bit with watching videos by Money GPS. And it's by a guy from Toronto, and he puts up charts and explains historically, based on old charts and new charts, what he's seeing with what's happening in regards to the economy. And sometimes he bases it on a different country, or he bases it on the United States. A lot of what I'm hearing on the Money GPS and on Lynette Zang's channels, I think it's ITBM Trading, some people think things are going to get really bad. They don't know when exactly, but they think that the dollar, US dollar, has a very limited lifespan, and that complex systems can be torn down rather rapidly into very simple systems. Right now, we have a very complicated government. And if all of that went away and we were again living in a situation where there was bartering and not a lot of governing, maybe a little bit like the Old West, maybe a little bit like medieval times, maybe just, much more localized transactions. If the stores weren't getting replenished with goods and we had to rely on our rural neighbors to get us milk and food and supplies and labor, and perhaps every complex system eventually breaks down and becomes a more simplistic system. So my fears are that this could happen at any time. So I've been examining in my mind, is it possible for the what's normal to us? And they call that, I guess, the normalcy bias. Is it possible for, what we think is the norm? And I looked up what normalcy bias means, and I think it's really interesting. But is it possible for this normal situation that we're in to just completely go away and us be living in very difficult times again? The normalcy bias, or normality bias, is a belief that people hold when facing a disaster. It causes people to underestimate both the likelihood of a disaster and its possible effects. Because people believe that things will always function the way they normally have functioned, this may result in situations where people fail to adequately prepare themselves for disasters, and on a larger scale, the failure of governments to include the populace in its disaster preparations. About 70% of people reportedly display normalcy bias in disasters. Journalist Amanda Ripley identified common response patterns of people in disasters and found that there are 3 phases of response: denial, deliberation, and decisive movement. The faster people can get through the denial and deliberation phase, the quicker they will reach the decisive moment and begin to take action. The normalcy bias can manifest itself in various disasters, ranging from car crashes to world historical events. It is hypothesized that the normalcy bias may be caused by the way the brain processes new information. Stress slows information processing, and when the brain cannot find an acceptable response to a situation, it fixates on a single and sometimes default solution. The single resolution can result in unnecessary injury or death in disaster situations. Which is so interesting. If you watch I guess it's the Bourne Legacy, I think it's the third of the Bourne movies, or maybe it was the Jason Bourne Supremacy. It's the third movie. Jason Bourne is directing a reporter. He's trying to save the guy's life. And he tells the guy to hide in this office or locker or whatever it is. It's this room. And he says, I'll tell you when to leave. Don't leave right now. And the guy's panicking. And he's panicking. And he thinks if he doesn't get out now, he's going to die. And Jason's like, just trust me. I know what I'm doing here. Stay in there. I'm watching. I'll tell you when to get out. Because Jason's on the other side, fighting people, knocking them down. And he knows that people, where people are if they're headed towards this reporter. But the reporter panics and he jumps out the door and he gets killed instantly. He gets shot. So the reporter can't handle this situation, this stressful situation. He should have had to change his thinking rapidly and go, okay, this guy just saved my life already. He's going to save it again. So he fails to act in the right way in the moment. Normalcy bias leads to inadequate shelter, supplies, and evacuation plans. Thus, normalcy bias can cause people to drastically underestimate the effects of the disaster and assume that everything will be all right. The negative effects of normalcy bias can be combated through the 4 stages of disaster response: preparation, warning, impact, and aftermath. Normalcy bias has also been called analysis paralysis, the ostrich effect, and by first responders, the negative panic. The opposite of normalcy bias is overreaction, or worst case scenario bias. That is what sometimes I'm afraid I'm thinking right now when I am preparing for whatever might come my way. Am I always thinking it's going to be the worst possible scenario? The opposite of normalcy bias is overreaction, or worst case scenario bias, in which small deviations from normality are dealt with as signals of an impending catastrophe. Amanda Ripley, the author of The Unthinkable, Who Survives When Disaster Strikes and Why, identifies common response patterns of people in disasters and explains that there are 3 phases of response: denial, deliberation, and decisive movement. With regard to the first phase, described as denial, Ripley found that people were likely to deny that a disaster was happening. It takes time for the brain to process information and recognize that a disaster is a threat. In the deliberation phase, people have to decide what to do. If the person does not have a plan in place, this creates a serious problem because the effects of life-threatening stress on the body, examples, tunnel vision, audio exclusion, and time dilations, out-of-body experiences, or reduced motor skills, limit an individual's ability to perceive information and make plans. Ripley asserts that in the third and final phase, described as the decisive moment, a person must act quickly and decisively. Failure to do so can result in injury or death. She explains that the faster someone can get through the denial and deliberation phase, the quicker they will reach the decisive moment and begin to take action. So today, something interesting happened in the dentist office. I was very concerned about the pain of this procedure and I asked for nitrous. During that process, I felt like I was losing control. I was, perhaps if they didn't turn down the nitrous, I thought I might forget to breathe or die. And so I examined my thinking, even though it was a little bit slow. The first thought was, I don't really care. This is nice. It feels nice. And then I thought, I'm either going to fall asleep. I feel incredibly drunk. I'm going to fall asleep and I'm not going to be okay. They're not going to be able to wake me up. So I said to myself, I can handle this. I can, I can, I can get them to turn off the nitrous or turn it down. And so I raised my hand, and the lady stopped working on me for a moment, and I said, can you have them turn down the nitrous? And I felt like, I don't know if you can overdose on it, but I was really concerned, even though I'm in this state of, it's not euphoria. Nitrous is more like placency drug. It makes you numb. It makes you okay with what's happening, and it calms you down a whole lot. I don't know that I'll use it again. I think I will just white knuckle through my fear instead of using it again, because I'm not sure, despite the fact that every few minutes they said to me, are you okay? And, and I had nodded every time they said, hey, are you okay? But I didn't want to lose consciousness. I was nervous. And I think maybe it's better just not to use mind-altering substances. Losing control for me is a really hard thing. So anyway, I felt like that was a moment in my mind when I was able to I really was enjoying it, but I didn't want to enjoy it so much that I didn't care what happened next. It's strange, but I felt like I was in a situation where I had to make a decisive moment and say, you need to turn this down. This is too much. So as part of this normalcy bias thinking, which I feel like most people are there. Most people are thinking, every day, my dollar is still going to buy me something. And every day, things are going to be pretty much the same as they were yesterday. Yeah, prices are creeping up a little bit here and there. Yeah, the national debt is at 21 trillion and growing. Yeah, the government can't afford to pay out the Social Security that they've promised people. And pensions are being discussed. It is being discussed that they will cut pensions. And, you say, oh, it's fine. I don't have a pension. It's not me. Well, what happens when your neighbors don't have any money? What happens when your neighborhood can't fix its roads or its infrastructure? When people don't have enough money to eat food? When the gas prices are through the roof? Is any of this sounding familiar? When there's homeless people everywhere? Is that normal? No, things are not normal. And that's why I've been thinking, is it me? Or are we living in a crazy world where the people we pass on the street are acting like everything's normal, but everything's not? I'm not saying this is this, huge catastrophe right now, but things don't look good. I don't see what's going to turn all this around. And the kind of news, the kind of media that I'm taking in is telling me things aren't going to get better. And we're going to have to go through a major reset before the economy improves. And is it just me? I mean, am I the only one who's concerned about where things are headed here? I said to a friend who travels a lot that I thought he should probably wear gold chains when he travels. I heard this from Lynette Zang, who's a financial specialist and also looks at a lot of graphs and charts and seems to think that we are in a no-win situation with the US dollar and with the Federal Reserve, which is not a government entity. If you didn't know that, do your homework. Unelected officials are running the money for the United States. And actually, unelected officials are also running the IMF. And if you don't know what the IMF is, you really need to do your homework. I can't get you started from this place of not knowing anything, but there's plenty of information out there if you want to learn. But Lynette Zang suggests that people who travel should wear thin gold chains so that, say they get stranded somewhere or any scenario happens. Let me give you a few examples. There's a nuclear war and it shuts down all the communications, so we can't use our credit cards. and we can't use, maybe the dollar, hyperinflation happens so quickly that our dollars are worthless. But we need to get currency of the place that we're at so that we can find our way home. Any scenario, there's so many scenarios. Computers get hacked, the internet goes down, the power goes out, your cash is no good, your credit cards are no good. Okay, the thin gold chains, anywhere in the world you can trade in a gold chain for cash and get home. So I said this to this guy. I said, I know you travel to Washington, D.C. a lot. You're on planes a lot. You really should wear thin gold chains. Laughs at me. Just laughs and walks away. And I thought, now here's a guy who should know. He's in D.C. He knows what's going on. He shouldn't think that's a joke. But I guess coming from me and my face, things seem like a joke all the time. But it's not. I'm worried that people that I care about will travel and will not be prepared for events that are going to come their way. Maybe I'm stupid for thinking that other people would want to take precautions that I think are a good idea. And maybe I'm crazy. I might be crazy then my husband's crazy too. And my kid. Because we like raising animals and growing our food and feeling secure. Oh my gosh. You see all these little bunnies nursing off the mama bunny? Such cuteness is just unfair. Look at this little legs. They kill me. But anyway, I feel like this property that we're living on, that we're developing as a homestead, is a security blanket for us. But I might be crazy. And I might embarrass myself when I suggest to other people that they carry an emergency bag with them, that they have a first aid kit. I mean, I don't think that's so crazy, but maybe my thinking's not right. You tell me, am I crazy? Thanks for showing up, you guys, and listening to my crazy. Hope you have a wonderful week and stay safe. Thanks for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that bell so you get notifications when my new videos come out.